Hi, I'm Nicole Slowey. I'm the Operations Director here at Qdos, and in this video today we're going to be discussing some recent statistics released about HMRC's CEST tool. The latest data that we have from HMRC about CEST runs from the 10-month period up to August 2021. Now, during that period, over 400,000 determinations resulted in an indeterminate result. That means that in almost 500,000 cases, HMRC's CEST tool was unable to actually deliver a result of a status assessment. So where did that actually leave the businesses, the recruitment agencies, or the contractors that were actually undertaking those assessments in order to establish status on a particular engagement? Well, according to HMRC's site and CEST itself, it instructs the users to go and refer to HMRC's guidance to in turn then make an assessment and an assertion on their own. The challenge with that is that leaves individuals who are not necessarily experienced in the nuances, in the technicalities of IR35 to make status assumptions that could in fact be incorrect. The other thing with that is that where individuals or companies are put in a scenario where they undertake an assessment and they arrive at an indeterminate result, an obvious step would be for individuals to rerun the test. So at that point, you run the risk of people ultimately trying to gamify an assessment in order just to arrive at an outcome. And the more that happens, the further that you get away from actually making an accurate assessment on a particular case. Another key statistic to come out of the information released by HMRC was that they arrived at an outside determination for only 49% of cases that were assessed via CEST. Now, the number in itself is not surprising given that it is an HMRC-based tool and some of the specifics of how it considers and calculates status. But what I would say is that's significantly out of balance against our own experience here at Qdos. So if we look at the work that we've done in considering status across public sector reform and private sector reform, we have undertaken 32,000 individual contractor assessments. And of those 32,000, we've considered 87% of those individual engagements as being outside of IR35. So the disparity there is pretty significant. Now, you could say that HMRC are naturally going to be more risk averse. They naturally want more contractors to be inside of IR35. But the basis upon which Qdos makes assessments as far as experienced individual IR35 consultants considering an array of facts really demonstrates that you can still have IR35 assessments and status determinations undertaken whereby you consider all of the facts accurately and compliantly. But there are scenarios where contractors can legitimately, in more cases than what some people might think, operating on an outside of IR35 basis. Now, coming on to that additional point I made there around how HMRC actually arrives at their determination and the considerations of how CEST actually works, those are the other areas that really have come under significant scrutiny over the life cycle of CEST itself. Now, notably, there is the consideration that as part of CEST, HMRC automatically assumes that mutuality of obligation and MU exists in every assessment. That means that every assessment that is undertaken via CEST is already starting from a position of negativity when it comes to IR35 status. So that in itself goes against case law. Now, we know that MU is such a big point of contention around current status cases as well that sit outside of the IR35 world. And it'll be interesting to see how those develop over time. But again, that calls into question, is that the right tool for organisations to be using to consider status where it's not wholly reflective of case law, as well as how other specialists consider IR35 status in the marketplace? In addition to that, we know that there is an over-reliance in HMRC's CEST tool in respect of the likes of substitution. So again, that in itself is a challenge where you're potentially questioning the validity of the assessments and the determinations that it's actually making. Now, so much of this actually comes back to the fact that CEST is not a mandatory tool. It's there to help and support organisations to consider IR35 status, but it's not a must-have, and there are other ways and means in which organisations can consider the IR35 status of their workforces and the individual contractors that they engage across their businesses. Extending on from the fact that CEST is in itself a free tool that can be used by anyone, so like we've said, it can be used by individual workers, engaging bodies, as well as fee payers on the supply chain, and the fact that the tool in itself is free, some of the statistics are a bit tricky to actually fully justify, because what it doesn't necessarily account for is repeated use of the tool. It doesn't account for organisations who maybe simply only use it for education, for informing, as a let's just see using HMRC CEST. So there's a lot to consider as part of that will most definitely happen at both an organisational level and an individual level. The final point that we kind of wanted to pull out on the CEST statistics and CEST as a whole is there have been a lot of significant cases in the public sector where those public sector bodies, as part of their obligations and responsibilities that they've had with them since 2017, have utilised CEST and have themselves found in a situation where they have had to pay HMRC significant sums of fines, penalties and tax liabilities as a result of their IR35 compliance activity, where CEST has ultimately been that baseline for that compliance activity. So it's important for organisations to recognise that whilst it is HMRC's tool, it's HMRC's solution and the technology that they put out there to help support organisations, it doesn't automatically mean that the utilisation of that tool is going to result in HMRC considering that your organisation has been fully, wholly and completely compliant in consideration of the legislation in itself. So something for organisations to really think about as part of your overarching compliance strategy. Should you use CEST, or should you use CEST in isolation, or should you use it as part of a larger piece of compliance activity and work in what's right for both your risk profile as an organisation, but making sure that you are as compliant as you possibly can be. For more information on the statistics I've discussed, there's a link in the description box below to an article where we go into everything in a little bit more detail. Thank you again for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our videos for more news, views and information from Qdos.